The day my wife's white moonlight returned to the country. I was reborn. Should I still divorce her? In my past life, she killed a heart that loved her. Only when I died on the operating table did I understand that my burning love meant nothing to Sophia Taylor, whose heart belonged to someone else. It was nothing but an annoying entanglement. She remained chaste for her white moonlight, Lucas Miller. Even as I was dying, she was busy preparing a fundraising banquet for Lucas Miller's departure abroad. When my consciousness gathered again, the blinding sunlight made my eyes ache. My nostrils filled with the familiar scent of expensive perfume that Sophia Taylor loved most. I sat before that costly divorce agreement. Opposite me was the wife I had loved for 10 years and endured for 10 years, Sophia Taylor. Her pretty fingertips tapped the signature line. Her expression was utterly cold and impatient. Ethan Johnson, it's just signing. Do you need this long to think? Lucas Miller is returning to the country today. Don't waste my time. It was this sentence. Exactly the same as last life. She would never know that the very Lucas Miller she was rushing to meet indirectly caused my death. And at my funeral after I died, she wore the first red dress I had given her, without shedding a single tear for me. Starting over, the piece of flesh she had gouged out of my chest still ached to the bone. Fine, whether dead or reborn. I'm done with this iron tree I've kept warm for 10 years. Fine. I heard my own voice, terrifyingly calm, without a trace of the struggles or pain I used to feel. I even gave her a smile of relief. Then, under her slightly stunned gaze, I picked up the pen she had offered without hesitation. The moment the tip of the pen was about to touch the paper, no, a shriek so sharp it nearly tore out. The woman opposite, always graceful and composed Sophia Taylor, seemed suddenly drained of all strength, as if struck hard by an invisible hammer. Her face went as pale as paper. She lunged at me suddenly, paying no heed to decorum, crazily knocking over the ink on the table. The thick black ink splashed out, instantly staining the pristine divorce papers and splattering her costly skirt. She trembled violently, like a dying swan, grabbing the hand I was pulling away with astonishing strength, her nails digging almost into my flesh. Not divorcing. I'm not divorcing. She looked up, her eyes filled with a remorse and fear I'd never seen before, tears flooding out without warning. Ethan Johnson, I'm not divorcing. I won't let you sign. I was stunned. Completely, utterly stunned. This is not Sophia Taylor. The Sophia Taylor I know would never show such a broken, abject expression. She would look at me with that cold, garbage-looking gaze and say, Ethan Johnson, you disgust me. The conference room was deathly silent. The lawyer and the assistant beside us were stunned, not daring to breathe. I tried hard to pull my hand away, but she clung on desperately, as if letting go would make me vanish into dust. Sophia Taylor, what game are you playing now? I said coldly, forcefully suppressing the faint stirrings in my heart. Weren't you the one so eager to get a divorce, so you could go to Lucas Miller's welcome party? Who are you putting on this act for now? No. She shook her head desperately, tears falling in big, burning drops onto the back of my hand. I won't see him. I'll never see him again. Ethan Johnson, I was wrong. I was really wrong. She babbled incoherently, only repeating, I'm wrong, and I won't leave. Those eyes, always cool and aloof, were now filled with a vast, nearly overwhelming pain, and with a kind of ecstatic madness at having regained something I couldn't understand. A wave of utter absurdity and irritation surged through me. I was reborn once. Has her illness gotten worse? Let go. My voice was laced with ice. I won't, she screamed, not letting go, but instead flinging herself forward, gripping my arm tight, as if drowning, and clutching the last piece of driftwood. If I let you go, you'll leave. You won't want me anymore. I know. Her body shook uncontrollably in my arms. Warm, soft, but it sent a chill through my heart, and a sting I couldn't quite put into words. In my last life, I had yearned for a hug for 10 years, and it turned out to be received under such circumstances. How ironic. Sophia Taylor. I ground out, snapping her fingers one by one. Don't give me more reason to despise you. Those words were like a knife, suddenly piercing her. She froze abruptly, looked up at me, and her eyes were filled with shattered despair. I took the chance to wrench my hand free from hers, stood up, and walked out without looking back. Another second there, and I felt like I would suffocate. Ethan Johnson! She screamed my name hoarsely, her voice breaking with sobs. I didn't look back. The staccato of high heels grew urgent. She caught up from behind again, threw herself around my waist regardless of everything, went limp, and slid to her knees against my spine. I am sorry. I'm sorry. She cried as if her heart were being ripped apart, utterly without composure. I am stupid. I am blind. I wronged you. Give me one more chance, just one. I beg you. The conference room door was open. Employees were already peeking in from outside, whispering. That's Sophia Taylor, who had always been aloof and wouldn't even spare me a glance, was now kneeling on the floor without any dignity, clutching the husband she despised most, begging not to divorce him. This scene was enough to blow anyone's mind. I felt not a shred of emotion, only endless exhaustion and absurdity. I pried her hand apart again, my voice so cold it sounded strange even to me. Sophia Taylor, it's too late. Having said that, I strode away, leaving her and her sudden breakdown far behind. When I reached the bottom of the office building, the cold wind hit my face, and I finally felt alive again. Dead, and then alive. The first thing I did was go through such a farce. How ridiculous. I hailed a taxi by the roadside and gave the driver the address of the old Los Angeles apartment complex where I had lived before marriage. That was my last safe house. In the car, I closed my eyes and tried to sort through the tangled thoughts. What on earth is wrong with Sophia Taylor? Multiple personality disorder? Or a more absurd thought faintly surfaced. Could she also? No, impossible. A person like her, even if she were reborn, would only sign off more gleefully, celebrating that she had shaken off me as a stumbling block. How could it be otherwise? The phone started vibrating like crazy. Sophia Taylor flashed across the screen. I hung up immediately and blocked her. The world suddenly quieted. When I arrived at that small yet familiar rental, a musty scent of old dust hit me. Everything here was frozen 10 years ago. Compared to the luxurious but cold villa where I died, this place was pitifully shabby, yet inexplicably gave me a sense of comfort. I collapsed onto the creaking old sofa, a familiar stabbing pain pulsing in my stomach. Right, stomach cancer. That thing was what ultimately took my life. It's still in the early stages, right? Good. It's treatable. This life, I have to live well. At night, I made a bowl of Master Kong noodles. My stomach ached faintly. In my last life, the illness started at this point and got worse and worse. After only a couple of bites, someone knocked on the door. Through the peephole, I saw Sophia Taylor standing outside, her hair mussed by the wind, her eyes rimmed red, and she was holding a thermos container, a lingering ghost. I opened the door and stood in the doorway, blocking her from coming in. Miss Taylor here to inspect the slums? She looked at the instant noodles in my hand, and tears fell instantly. Your stomach is bad. Don't eat that. How would she know about my stomach problem? I had never told her. In my previous life at this time, I hadn't even paid much attention to that slight discomfort. My heart plummeted, and an absurd, horrifying thought shot through me. Could she also? No, impossible. If she had come back too, she'd only hate me more, be even more eager to dump me. How could you look like this? I suppressed the pounding in my chest and sneered on purpose. Sophia Taylor, are you worried about me? Or did you poison the food, trying to send me off? Her face went even paler. Her lips trembled as she handed over the thermos. I made porridge. It's good for the stomach. I watched her so cautiously obsequious, groveling and appeasing demeanor with not a trace of feeling. Instead, a wicked fire flared up inside me. In my past life, I was like a simp, cooking for her in all sorts of ways, and she'd either toss it out or feed it to the trash. Who is she putting on this act for now? I lifted my hand and knocked over the thermos. Crack! Warm porridge and millet splashed everywhere, even onto her expensive skirt and the tops of her shoes. She froze where she stood, staring at the mess on the floor, tears falling in large, silent drops. I waited for her to flare up, waited for her to show her true colors, and, like before, hurl the cruelest words at me, calling me ungrateful. But she didn't. She simply crouched down and used her hand to pick up the broken porcelain pieces one by one. Her voice so soft it was almost inaudible. I'm sorry. I didn't hold it steady. I'll go boil some more. She looked up, her eyes red like a rabbit's, filled with almost desperate pleading. Don't eat instant noodles, okay? At that moment, my heart was in turmoil. She's not right. This is so wrong. This is absolutely not the haughty Sophia Taylor who wouldn't even spare me a proper glance. A terrifying suspicion took root in my mind. She might really be like me. The thought sent chills all through me. If it's true, then everything she's doing now is out of guilt? Or because she knows that after I die, no one will love her like I did? Like an idiot? Either way, it makes me sick. I slam the door, cutting off the side of her face that unsettles me. The world quieted down, but the overturned bowl of porridge and the despair in her eyes won't leave my mind. In the middle of the night, my stomach ached terribly. I, driven by some ghostly impulse, opened the door. At the doorway sat a new insulated food container, and beneath it was a note. Hot. Please eat a bit. The handwriting was hers, but the strokes trembled. I stared at that pot of porridge as if it were Pandora's box. In the end, I didn't touch it. Reborn once. I'd rather starve to death than eat another bite of hers. For the next few days, Sophia Taylor became my shadow. I look for jobs, and she waits downstairs at the company where I'm interviewing. I eat fast food, and she orders a whole table of dishes at the next table, not touching a bite, just staring at me. I return to my rented room, and she sits by the flower bed downstairs like an abandoned stray cat. She doesn't make a scene. She just follows me with that sad, obsessive look. The neighbors start pointing and whispering, guessing that I'm some jerk who plays with women's feelings. I'm completely fed up. Until that day, Lucas Miller appeared. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, looking all polished as he held a bouquet of red roses, and he deliberately blocked the alley to my rented room. He also saw Sophia Taylor waiting downstairs. Sophia. His eyes lit up as he hurried over, his tone affectionate with just the right touch of reproach. Where have you been these past few days? You haven't answered your calls. I was really worried. Has he been bothering you again? He glanced at me, and the contempt and disdain in his eyes were exactly the same as in my previous life. I stood with my hands in my pockets, watching coldly, waiting to see Sophia Taylor, just like in my past life, melt instantly and throw herself into his arms. Sophia Taylor turned around, and when she saw Lucas Miller, her expression suddenly went icy. It was a kind of cold I had never seen on her face before, even tinged with a hint of murderous intent. Entangled, Sophia Taylor's voice had no warmth at all. She even took a step back, avoiding the flowers Lucas Miller held out. Lucas Miller, are you talking about yourself? Lucas Miller's smile froze on his face. Sophia, what's wrong with you? I'm fully aware of what I'm saying. Sophia Taylor's tone was calm, each word like a blade. Also, we're not close. Please use my full name, Sophia Taylor. Hell yeah. Although I didn't want to admit it, at that moment, looking at Lucas Miller's stunned, beaten expression, I did feel a flash of satisfaction. Lucas Miller's face went pale and sallow as he tried to salvage the situation. Sophia, did this guy tell you something? Stir things up? Someone from his background would do anything for money. What kind of person is he? Sophia Taylor cut him off sharply, her voice rising. He's my husband, the only legal spouse in the eyes of the law. And you? Who do you think you are? She took a step forward, staring Lucas Miller down. Her presence forced him to step back half a pace. As for you, Lucas Miller, were you planning to repay the $500,000 you borrowed from me last month under the pretext of an investment? I still have the IOU. Lucas Miller's eyes widened instantly, and he blurted out, You know it was $500,000? I clearly told you it was $300,000. The words barely left his mouth when he suddenly clapped a hand over it, his face ashen. Sophia Taylor smiled, a cold, mocking smile. Oh, so it's $500,000. Thank you for saying it yourself. How did she know the exact amount? She even knew that? My heart jolted. That suspicion was nearly confirmed. Lucas Miller was completely flustered. Sophia, let me explain. No need. Sophia Taylor took out her phone and started recording. Mr. Miller, please give a clear answer. When will the $500,000 loan be repaid? Otherwise, we'll see each other in court. By the way, I will also submit the messages you sent me earlier, defaming my husband, as evidence. Lucas Miller acted as if he had just met Sophia Taylor for the first time, so frightened that he could hardly speak, and nearly fled in panic. The bouquet of expensive red roses was abandoned on the ground, trampled to a pulp. Sophia Taylor didn't even look. Her gaze turned to me, carrying a faint, barely noticeable mixture of wanting credit and nervousness. I looked away, my mind in a complete tangle. She really had changed. She had become unfamiliar, become strange. She hit Lucas Miller precisely, using only information that surfaced later in the previous life. She's definitely coming back. This realization made it hard to breathe. It meant that what I thought was a fresh start was still tightly bound to the woman I hated with a passion. Just as I was trying to process it all, an even heavier blow hit. A neighbor from my old Los Angeles home called, voice urgent. "Ethan, come back right away. Your mom suddenly collapsed and was taken to Los Angeles County Hospital. The doctors say it's a stroke and she needs surgery immediately. Prepare $100,000. With a thunderous boom, my mind exploded. In my previous life, it was at exactly this moment. My mom had this stroke. The Los Angeles County Hospital had limited resources. I couldn't scrape together the surgery fee. We missed the best treatment window. And although they saved her life in the end, she was left with severe aftereffects. And within 2 years, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone. An overwhelming panic and helplessness engulfed me instantly. I've been given a second life. Can I still not change this fate? I ran out like a madwoman to raise money, calling everyone I could. But I had just been swept out the door by Sophia Taylor and was penniless. When those so-called friends heard me ask for money, they either gave perfunctory replies or hung up outright. Despair, like cold tide water, flooded me inch by inch. I crouched in the hospital corridor that reeked of disinfectant, clutching my head, feeling as if fate had once again gripped my throat. Could it be that being reborn once was only so I would have to go through all the pain and helplessness again? Just as I was about to be crushed, a figure came gasping to a stop in front of me. It was Sophia Taylor. Her hair was disheveled, sweat beading across her forehead. She had clearly been running the whole way. She didn't ask anything. She just shoved the bag in my arms, her voice choppy from running. The money is ready. The best specialist, Dr. Lewis from Los Angeles, is on his way, arriving soon. I stared dumbfounded and opened the bag. Inside were neat stacks of brand new cash and a completed hospital admission form. How could she? She looked at me, her eyes clear and urgent, as if she'd seen through all my despair. "Mom, Annie will definitely be okay. Trust me." This time, there was none of the previous meekness or pleading in her eyes, only an unquestionable resolve. I watched her, my heart as if seized hard by an invisible hand, then suddenly released. Not only did she know my mother would get sick, she even knew how much money I would need and which specialist to find. All the suspicions and tests found their answers in that moment. Sophia Taylor, she really had returned from that painful future, just like me. And while my mind was reeling, trying to make sense of all this chaos, she took a small object from her pocket and carefully placed it in my palm. It was a faded red talisman, embroidered with a crooked on character. My pupils constricted suddenly. My mother had prayed for this at the temple many years ago and gave it to me. I wore it close to my body until in my previous life, during an argument, Sophia Taylor said it looked cheap and tacky, ripped it off, and threw it out the window. Because of that, we had a huge fight, and that was the first time I shouted at her. It was a wound buried very deep in my heart. She looked at me, tears streaming silently down her face, mixing with sweat and splashing onto the hospital's cold floor. "I'm sorry." Her voice choked. I searched under the windowsill of the old house for a long time before I finally found it. "Ethan Johnson, this time, please give me a chance." I held the safety amulet I'd regained, looking at the woman before me who was both familiar and strange, then at the light glowing in the emergency room. The solid, frozen heart finally cracked, forming a thin fissure at this moment. Not because of forgiveness, but because of overwhelming shock and incomprehension. What on earth did she do all this for? On the 7th day after I died, in the 3rd month since I was reborn, Lucas Miller finally made his move. The trap he set for me was exactly the same as the one from my previous life. A sloppily falsified account, a bribed trusted employee, a carefully staged accidental discovery. The charge was embezzlement, a huge sum, enough to bury me behind bars for life. Last time I fell right into that pit. Sophia Taylor believed Lucas Miller's lies, thought me morally corrupt, and when I needed her most, she gave me the coldest of looks. That look crushed me more than any prison sentence had before. But this time, when I looked at the anonymous tip on my computer screen, I could only laugh. Lucas Miller was still so unoriginal. Ethan Johnson, the assistant, pushed the door open and came in, her face pale. "The audit department is here. They said they want to audit the accounts." I leaned back in my chair, not even bothering to get up. Let them audit. People quickly gathered outside the office, whispers buzzing like flies. I saw Lucas Miller. He stood at the back of the crowd, his face showing just the right mix of shock and heartbreak. The acting is really good. The auditors expressionlessly took away my computer and files. Someone from HR came over right after and mechanically informed me. Mr. Johnson, please take a temporary leave and cooperate with the investigation until it's concluded. No problem. I smiled, even starting to pack my things, ready to give myself a long break. Just when I thought this farce would proceed as planned, the office door was flung open. Sophia Taylor stood there in a sharply tailored black suit, her gaze so cold it could freeze a person. Behind her were the company's two largest shareholders and her chief legal team. The whole room fell instantly silent. Lucas Miller's expression froze, and he instinctively stepped forward. Sophia, what are you doing here? There's a bit of an issue. Sophia Taylor didn't even look at him, walking straight up to the head of auditing. Her voice was quiet, but landed on everyone's hearts. Who approved you to go directly to the VP's office to audit the books? Was the procedure followed? Was it reported to the board? The audit head wiped sweat from his brow. Ms. Taylor, we've received an anonymous tip. An anonymous tip? Sophia Taylor interrupted him, taking a document from the lawyer, standing behind her, and slamming it onto the table. Is this what you're talking about? Funny, I happen to have a tip as well. She tilted her head slightly. Her cold gaze finally swept toward Lucas Miller, whose face was turning pale. A tip against Chief Financial Officer Lucas Miller. Framing, falsifying accounts, embezzling company assets. The chain of evidence is far more complete than yours. A twist. My heart skipped a beat. You're lying, Lucas Miller shouted, but everyone could hear the bluff in his voice. Sophia Taylor ignored him and, facing the two shareholders and all the employees, began to lay out her case with clear, methodical reasoning. Every detail she spoke of, even the last digits of the secret account Lucas Miller had used to transfer the money through an intermediary, was laid out plainly. That couldn't have been discovered on the spot. Like me, she had returned with memories of the future. She knew this day would come. She wasn't saving me. She was putting on a revenge play she had directed long ago for my sake. Lucas Miller was completely thrown into panic and spoke without thinking. Sophia, are you crazy? Why are you helping him? Have you forgotten how you used to talk about him to me? You said he was spineless, useless, just disgusting to look at. You said you only loved. Shut up. Sophia Taylor snapped at him in a stern voice, but it was already too late. Those unforgettable words, like poison needles, once again pierced precisely into the softest part of my heart. Even hearing them again, even if I could do it over, it still hurts. The office was deathly silent. Everyone looked at me with pity. Sophia Taylor's face went ashen. She snapped her head toward me, her lips trembling as she tried to explain. Ethan Johnson, that wasn't. Back then I raised my hand and stopped her. No need. I picked up my coat, ready to leave that suffocating place. The truth was out. It wasn't my problem anymore. But just as I passed by Lucas Miller, this man who had completely collapsed suddenly grabbed the heavy glass ashtray from the table and, like a gambler who had lost everything, with bloodshot eyes, swung it down on my head. Go to hell. His speed was so fast that the people around didn't react in time. I instinctively tried to block it, but someone was faster than me. A figure suddenly lunged in front of me. There was a dull thud. The ashtray slammed hard onto the arm she used to block, and immediately a cup of scalding coffee, whoever had left it by the table, was splashed all over the side of her face and neck. Sophia Taylor gave a muffled groan, curling up from the pain, yet she stubbornly remained standing in front of me. Time seemed to stand still. The security guard finally rushed up and restrained the frantic Lucas Miller. He was still shouting and cursing, but I couldn't hear anything. I only saw Sophia Taylor's ashen face. The arm that had been struck hung unnaturally and was quickly swelling red. The cheek and neck where the coffee had been thrown were reddened in a large patch, even forming tiny blisters. It hurt so much that tears welled in her eyes, yet she gritted her teeth and refused to cry out. She looked up at me, and the first thing she said was, "Ethan Johnson, are you okay?" It perfectly overlapped with a scene from my previous life. Only the roles were reversed. In my last life, Lucas Miller, because of failed business, hired people to ambush us. She instinctively hid behind me then. I took the blows for them, my head split and bleeding. Afterwards, she only checked whether Lucas Miller was hurt. To me, covered in blood, she furrowed her brow and said, "Are you all right? You look a little scary." Now, she was standing in front of me, A violent pain and an indescribable sense of absurdity swept over me. The cold hatred I had been accumulating for months was, at the moment she took that blow for me, struck so hard it nearly toppled me. I almost roughly grabbed the uninjured arm, pushed through the motionless crowd, ignored every gaze, and shoved her into the elevator, down to the garage, throwing her into the passenger seat of my car. I floored the accelerator and drove to the hospital without saying a word. Registration, consultation, X-ray. The doctor looked at the X-ray, ulnar fracture in the arm. 2nd-degree burns. We'll treat the wounds first, then put on a cast. When the nurse cleaned and dressed her wounds, the disinfectant stung. She trembled with pain, drew in a sharp breath, and her forehead was covered in cold sweat. I stood beside her like a pillar. She suddenly looked up, eyes full of tears, her voice choked and full of grievance. Ethan Johnson, it hurts so much. At this moment, she was no longer the cold, commanding, strategically minded Miss Taylor, nor the pathetic, pleading, emotionally shattered lunatic. She was like a child who had finally found someone to lean on, shouting out in pain without restraint. The high wall I had built collapsed at one corner with that cry. I stiffly reached out my hand and held it out in front of her. She froze for a moment. Then, without hesitation, with the hand that hadn't been injured, she gripped my wrist tightly, her nails digging almost into my flesh, as if it were her lifeline. Throughout the whole procedure, she held my hand like that, crying without any restraint, her tears and snot smearing all over my sleeve. I didn't pull away from her. By the time everything was finished, it was already late at night. Her right hand was in a cast, and gauze covered the left side of her face and neck, looking bedraggled and pitiful. I drove her back to our marital home, the Los Angeles villa I hadn't returned to since I was reborn. The car stopped at the villa gate. Inside the car, there was complete silence. "Today, thank you," I said in a dry voice, feeling how ridiculous the words sounded. She whipped her head around to look at me, her eyes still swollen and red, with a strange brightness in them. "You're willing to talk to me?" I didn't look at her, staring straight ahead. "Were the things Lucas Miller said spoken by you?" Her expression immediately dimmed. She lowered her head, and after a long while she softly said, Back then, I was stupid, I was blind, I let myself be fooled." Her tears fell again, hitting the plaster. "Ethan Johnson, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I know it's too late to say anything now. All that hurt is already. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I only beg you to give me a chance. Let me." "Why did you come back too?" I interrupted her, asking the question that had been circling in my mind. She choked out, "After you died, I finally saw Lucas Miller's true colors. Finally realized how much you had given for me. I couldn't take it. I want to find you. I cried at your grave for 3 days. Then when I opened my eyes, I was back." She looked at me, tears flowing harder. "Ethan Johnson, that's my retribution. Losing you is the greatest punishment heaven has given me. If I could do it over, I'd rather die than miss you again." Her words were like a dull knife, slowly cutting into my heart. Those past life memories I tried to forget. Her indifference, my despair, the coldness of death, tangled with her humble, anguished, love-filled face now, nearly tearing me apart. I hate her, but it's like I can't just stand by and watch her get hurt and cry for me. I took a deep breath, forced down the churning emotions in my chest, and opened the car door. "It's late, go home and rest." The light in her eyes slowly went out, turning into despair. She gradually let go of the hem of my coat she'd been clutching, like an abandoned little animal, lowering her head and clumsily using one hand to open the car door. Just as she set one foot out of the car, I heard my own dry voice. "Don't get your hands wet until the injury heals." Her movement froze, then she spun back to look at me, a reluctant, tentative hope rekindling in her eyes. I turned away irritably and started the car. "If you need help, you can call me." After saying that, I didn't look at her again. I almost fled, stomping on the gas. In the rearview mirror, she stood alone, dazed in the cold night wind, staring in the direction of my car, motionless for a long time, like a rock that had waited 1,000 years for her husband to return. I knew I was done for. The dikes I had built for months collapsed completely in the one moment she took the blow for me and in the flood of tears that broke the levee. The hatred was still there, but beneath that hatred, that damned, humbling love began to rekindle like a phoenix from ashes. It seemed like I was going to lose this battle again. Lucas Miller and his family's company were completely crushed by Sophia Taylor with thunderous measures, with no chance of ever rising again. The day the news arrived was sunny. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling window and fell on the coffee she carefully set down for me. The latte art was an awkward little heart. She wore a tentative, not quite fully radiant smile that seemed to seek credit, her eyes sparkling as she looked at me. I didn't look at the coffee. I just looked at her. I watched for a long time, long enough that the smile on her face gradually stiffened, unsure what to do. "Sophia Taylor," I said, my voice so calm it sounded strange even to me. "It's over." Her lashes fluttered violently, as if she'd been scalded. "The revenge is settled, the misunderstanding cleared, and my mother is safe." I paused, feeling each word sandpaper my throat. "What you've done for me is more than enough. We're even." "No." She panicked instantly, reaching to grab my hand but stopped by my gaze, only able to fumble with the edge of her clothes. "Ethan Johnson, I didn't do this to clear everything at once. I know." I cut her off, afraid to hear that word. "I know you truly regret it, that you've truly come back. But what about me?" I pointed to the place over my heart, where there was a numb void. "Sophia Taylor," my heart seems to have stopped. "No funeral pyre you build can warm a corpse that's already frozen through. When I see you, I think of the way you used to look at me, like I was a pile of garbage. I remember begging you to come home for a meal, and you said I was keeping you from watching a movie with Lucas Miller. I remember dying in the rain, my hand still clutching the life-saving money I never got to give you." My tone was flat, as if recounting someone else's story. But her face grew paler with each of my sentences, tears surging silently. She bit her lip hard to stop herself from crying out. "You did very well, truly." I even tried to smile at her, but failed. "But I'm tired. Let me go, and let yourself go too." She slumped onto the sofa opposite, as if all her bones had been removed. The air grew still, leaving only her suppressed, fragmented gasps. After a long time, she lifted her head, tear-streaked, but her eyes held a strange calm that seemed washed by despair. "Okay," she said. This time, I was the one who froze. She stood up, took a document out of her bag, and gently pushed it in front of me. It wasn't a divorce agreement. It was a share transfer agreement. She transferred all the Taylor Group shares under her name, as well as all our joint marital property, to me. She had already signed the signature line. The date was a month ago. "This is all I can give you, all of it, an insignificant compensation." Her voice was very soft, carrying an exhaustion that had drained everything. "Ethan Johnson, I won't bother you anymore." She took a deep breath and forced out a smile that looked worse than crying. "You deserve a brand new life. Without me, a better one." She left. She didn't look back. The moment the door closed softly, I sat in a room full of sunlight, yet felt colder than when I died on that rainy night in my previous life. The world suddenly fell into a terrifying silence. She really was gone. She no longer appeared at my door every morning on time with breakfast. No longer clumsily cooked late-night meals when I worked overtime and had them sent by a colleague. No longer panicked and ran across the city to buy medicine because of my casual stomachache. No longer follow me every moment with those eyes mixed with regret and a crazed kind of love. She was completely peeled away from my life. I obtained the freedom and release I had longed for since my rebirth. But staring at that astronomical transfer agreement, I felt nothing but intense irony and emptiness. I tried to start my new life. I accepted an offer from an overseas company located in a sun-drenched city on the other side of the world with no memories. While packing my luggage, as if compelled by some unseen force, I booked 2 plane tickets. I blamed this ridiculous notion on habit. On the day of departure, Los Angeles International Airport was swarming with people. I checked my luggage, took my boarding pass, and headed toward the security checkpoint. Every step felt like treading on cotton, light and unreal. Then I saw her. She stood quietly by a huge pillar not far from the security checkpoint, wearing a simple white dress, like a cloud about to disperse. She didn't look at me. She just stared blankly at the International Departures Board, her eyes hollow, her face expressionless, as if she had frozen into a statue, waiting for her husband. Why did she come? Didn't she say she'd let me go? Is she here to perform one last act, betting that I'll soften? A sudden, inexplicable agitation and a sharp sting seized me. I almost immediately looked away and quickened my pace. wanting only to get through security quickly and completely escape this place where she was. The line was long. I stood at the end, my back turned toward her, my spine rigidly straight. I could feel that gaze silently searing my back, burning and despairing. Like the me from my past life. Like her after she was reborn. Countless images flashed uncontrollably through my mind. It was her kneeling in the divorce office, crying, "I won't divorce," in a frenzy. It was her waiting outside my rented room, humble, holding a bowl of porridge she had warmed and warmed again. It was her by my mother's sickbed, tirelessly and meticulously washing her body. It was she who, when facing Lucas Miller, shielded me behind her, her gaze fierce and resolute in protection. And just now, those eyes of hers had been completely extinguished of all light, deathly silent. My heart clenched sharply, a piercing pain so intense it almost stole my breath. That frozen organ I thought would never beat again. Turns out it can still ache. "Sir? Sir!" The security officer's urging brought me back to my senses. "It's my turn." I handed over my boarding pass and passport, mechanically moving forward. 1 step, 2 steps. Through the gap in the security gate, I think I can still catch a glimpse of that white figure, still standing where she was, as if abandoned by the whole world. She really just came to see me off. She said, "Let go," and truly, in the most brutal way, tore herself out of my world from the roots. She burned herself out, only to warm me. And I, carrying all the leftover warmth she offered, am I really going to leave like this? Fuck the better life. Without her, everywhere is just that cold rain from the past life. Just as the security officer signaled me to pass through the metal detector, I suddenly turned around, and amid the astonished gazes of the other passengers in line, I ran against the flow, recklessly charging back out. I crashed through the crowd, my heart pounding wildly in my chest, as if it would leap out. I saw her, as if she'd heard the commotion. She turned her head in bewilderment. Then her pupils suddenly widened, and she stared at me in disbelief as I ran toward her like a madwoman. I came to a sudden stop a few steps from her, my chest heaving violently as I gasped for breath. The sound of the whole world vanished, leaving only the deafening pounding of my heart. She looked at me, her eyes wide, her lips trembling slightly, unable to utter a single word. Only tears, like beads snapped from a string, fell silently and frantically. I watched her rimmed eyes, watched the unabashed trails of tears on her face, watched that love, humiliating to the utmost, that seemed poised to destroy her. I took a deep breath and felt the massive boulder that had clogged 2 lifetimes at last crack open. I opened my arms toward her slowly. My voice was hoarse beyond recognition, yet carried an unprecedented, relieved calm. "Sophia Taylor," I said, teach me how to love you again." She seemed frozen in place. A few seconds later, she let out a small, animal-like, fractured whimper and suddenly threw herself into my arms, knocking me off balance. She hugged me with all her strength, her fingernails digging nearly into my flesh, trembling all over as she cried uncontrollably. Slower. I stiffly wrapped my arms around her, feeling the warm, real body in my embrace, and closed my eyes. "I've waited for you for so long. This time, you wait for me." The airport announcements echoed around us, sunlight pouring through the huge glass dome and casting a warm golden sheen over us. She nodded heavily in my arms, her tears soaking through my shirt, hot and burning. What lies at the end of the road perhaps never really mattered. What mattered was that, after 2 lifetimes, we finally stood in the sunlight together again. And this time, she finally learned how to hold me tightly.